Have you ever watched a migrating bird and wondered how it finds exactly the same spot, thousands of miles away without a GPS? Or have you ever wondered how your nose manages to distinguish almost identical smells with a precision that defies classical chemistry? What if I told you that the answer to these questions, and perhaps even the secret of your own consciousness, lies not in traditional biology, but in the bizarre, counterintuitive, and spooky laws of quantum mechanics? For decades, physicists and biologists have lived in separate worlds. Biology was the realm of the warm, the wet, and the complex, while quantum mechanics belonged to extreme cold, vacuum, and isolation. But today, that wall is crumbling. We are discovering that life itself, from bacteria to plants, and perhaps even to the neurons in our brains, may have learned to exploit quantum tricks billions of years before we humans wrote the equations for them. Get ready, because what we are about to explore, including the fascinating theory about the human mind, will forever change the way you look at nature. Before we dive into this incredible journey through spooky particles, navigating birds, and the mysteries of the mind, I ask for a fundamental gesture to support our work. If these topics fascinate you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment to help the algorithm understand that this community wants high-quality, in-depth content. All right, let's get started. To understand why quantum biology has long been considered a crazy idea, we first need to understand what makes quantum mechanics so hard to digest. As the great physicists remind us, if quantum mechanics doesn't scare you a little, you probably haven't understood it. We are talking about particles that can be in two places at once, cats that are both alive and dead at the same time until we observe them, and instantaneous connections between distant objects that Einstein defined as spooky action at a distance. Traditionally, it has always been thought that these extremely delicate phenomena could only exist under extreme laboratory conditions, temperatures close to absolute zero, and total isolation. Imagine quantum coherence like the ripples on a flat lake after throwing two stones. The waves overlap, creating a perfect pattern. But life, biology, is like that lake during a thunderstorm. Cells are warm, wet, noisy environments filled with molecules constantly bumping into each other. In such an environment, the quantum magic should vanish instantly, destroyed by what we call decoherence. Yet, it seems that nature didn't read the physics textbooks. It seems that evolution, with its billions of years of trial and error, has found a way to keep that lake calm long enough to exploit these tricks for survival. Let's start with something very concrete, something we take for granted: our sense of smell. How do we distinguish the scent of a rose from that of rotten eggs? Classical theory, the one studied in school, tells us about a lock and key mechanism. Imagine that inside your nose there are receptors acting as locks, and that odor molecules are the keys. If the shape of the molecule fits the receptor, the signal triggers and you smell the scent. Simple, right? However, there are anomalies that this theory struggles to explain. Take a complex molecule, for example. If we replace some of its hydrogen atoms with deuterium, which is chemically identical but weighs twice as much, the shape of the molecule does not change. It is the same key. It should fit into the same lock and produce the same smell, but it doesn't. As discussed by physicist Seth Lloyd, experiments show that these two molecules, identical in shape but different in weight, have completely different smells. One might have a sweet grassy scent, while the other smells like rotten eggs. How is this possible? The answer might lie in a phenomenon called quantum tunneling. If the shape is the same, but the mass is different, the way the molecule vibrates changes. The quantum theory of smell suggests that our receptors aren't just touching the molecule to feel its shape, but are listening to it, they are detecting its vibrations. For the receptor to activate, an electron must jump from one part to another, tunneling through an energy barrier. But it can only do so if the vibration of the odor molecule is just right, facilitating the jump. It is as if our nose were a miniature quantum spectroscope, capable of detecting the vibratory signature of atoms. But if the sense of smell seems surprising to you, wait until you hear what happens in the skies above our heads. Bird migration is one of nature's great mysteries. How do geese, robins, and other birds travel thousands of miles and return to exactly the same spot as the previous year? We know they use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass. But how do they perceive it? They don't have a piece of iron in their beaks that turns north. The Earth's magnetic field is extremely weak, yet they sense it with precision. Scientists, including Thorsten Ritz, have worked on a fascinating hypothesis. Birds might see the magnetic field thanks to quantum entanglement. The idea is that inside the bird's eye, in a protein called cryptochrome, blue or green light hits an electron, transferring it and creating a pair of radicals. These two particles are entangled. Even if separated, they share a common destiny and instantly know what the other is doing. This pair of electrons becomes hypersensitive to the orientation of the Earth's magnetic field. Depending on how the bird is oriented relative to the magnetic field, the electrons dance differently, and this changes the final chemical reaction in the eye. It is possible that the bird literally sees the magnetic field as a shade of color or a brightness superimposed on its visual field. The proof? We cannot ask the bird what it sees, but we can conduct experiments. If an oscillating magnetic field is applied at specific frequencies, capable of disturbing the spin state of the electrons, but not a classical magnetic compass, the birds lose their orientation. This strongly suggests that the mechanism is not based on a classical magnetic needle, but on delicate quantum states that are maintained inside the warm and wet eye of a living animal. It is an extraordinary example of how biology might protect these quantum states to use them as navigation tools. Let's get back to the topic. Let's talk about photosynthesis. In school, we were taught that plants capture sunlight and transform it into chemical energy. It seems like a linear, almost mechanical process. But there is a problem. When a photon hits a leaf, the excited energy, which we call an exciton, must travel through a forest of chlorophyll molecules until it reaches the reaction center, where it is stored. If this transport occurred classically, like a ball bouncing randomly between molecules, the exciton would lose energy with every collision. Much of the solar energy would be lost as heat before arriving at the destination. But photosynthesis is incredibly efficient, almost 100% in the early stages of transfer. Experiments conducted on green sulfur bacteria have shown something astounding. The exciton does not behave like a ball looking for the path. It behaves like a wave. Thanks to quantum superposition, the exciton simultaneously explores all possible paths towards the reaction center. It doesn't choose one road at a time. It travels them all together. And, through a process of quantum interference, it almost instantly finds the most efficient route without waste. It is a natural quantum calculation. Plants and bacteria are, in a sense, running a quantum search algorithm every time they absorb light. And that is not all. It seems that protection mechanisms based on entanglement exist. Some molecules, like carotenes, appear to act as sponges that selectively absorb bad or harmful excitons based on their entanglement state, protecting the plant from sunburn at the atomic level. It is a level of engineering that we humans are just beginning to understand. But let's go even further, to the very code of life: DNA. DNA is a molecule that must be stable to preserve information, but it must also be capable of mutating to allow for evolution. One of the most intriguing theories concerns the protons that hold the two strands of the double helix together. Normally, these protons sit in a specific position, but due to tunneling, there is a probability, however small, that a proton instantaneously jumps to the other side of the energy barrier, moving to the opposite strand. If this quantum leap happens right at the moment the DNA is replicating, it can lead to a copying error, a mutation. This means that evolution, the driving force of life on Earth, could be guided, at least in part, by the intrinsic randomness of quantum mechanics. It is not just deterministic chemistry. There is an element of quantum probability written into the heart of our genetics. And the fascinating thing is that we are starting to use these principles in technology as well. There are patents and research, such as those mentioned by Paul Davies and developed by Stuart Lindsay, that aim to sequence DNA and proteins using the tunnel effect itself. By passing DNA through a tiny hole and measuring how electrons tunnel through the different bases, we can read the code of life much faster than was ever possible before. It is a perfect example of how understanding the quantum nature of biology allows us to develop revolutionary new technologies. But there is one final frontier, perhaps the most controversial and fascinating of all, that deserves to be explored. We have talked about the nose, bird eyes, leaves, and DNA. But what about the most complex organ in the known universe? The human brain. Here we enter territory where frontier science meets philosophical speculation. If nature learned to use quantum coherence for photosynthesis and navigation, is it possible that it also used it to generate consciousness? Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose is one of the few giants of science who dare to support this thesis, despite the skepticism of many colleagues. Penrose's theory, developed together with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggests that our neurons contain microscopic structures called microtubules, which could function as biological quantum computers. According to this view, consciousness would not be the product of complex algorithmic computation, like that of a classical computer, but would derive from fundamental quantum processes occurring within these structures. It is crucial to be clear here, this is still speculation. The scientific community is divided. Many physicists, like Max Tegmark, have calculated that the brain is an environment too warm, wet, and noisy to maintain the quantum coherence necessary for conscious thoughts. According to classical calculations, decoherence would happen too fast. However, the discovery that photosynthesis exploits quantum mechanics in warm and wet environments has reopened a crack in that door. If a bacterium can protect a quantum state, why couldn't a neuron? Paul Davies himself admits that, although it is a wild idea, quantum mechanics could play a role in introducing variation and indeterminacy in the brain, elements perhaps essential for free will and creativity, distinguishing us from deterministic machines. If this hypothesis were true, it would mean that our thoughts, our emotions, and our very awareness have roots that sink into the deepest fabric of physical reality, where the rules of common sense stop working. We arrive, then, at the biggest question of all, the origin of life. How did inanimate matter become alive? It is the great scientific mystery. Paul Davies suggests a fascinating point of view. Life is not just matter, it is information. It is the ability to process and replicate information with variations. Classical mechanics is deterministic. If you know the initial state, you know exactly what will happen next. There is no true variation, no true novelty. Quantum mechanics, on the other hand, introduces indeterminacy, probability, and intrinsic variation. Perhaps, some scientists speculate, it is precisely this quantum creativity that allowed matter to make the leap towards life. Perhaps life is nothing more than a system that has learned to ride the wave of quantum probability to maintain its balance against the chaos of the universe. Of course, we must be very careful. Not everything that is strange is quantum, and not everything that is life is explainable by particle physics. There are strict rules about what we can state with certainty. Science is made of evidence, not just nice stories. However, experiments on photosynthesis, bird navigation, and smell tell us that there is something real here. It is not mysticism. It is not pseudoscience. It is physics, applied in a context we hadn't foreseen. So, what do we take home from all this? That nature is much more refined than we thought. For centuries, we looked at animals and plants as biological machines made of levers, pumps, and standard chemical reactions. Today, we are starting to see them as masters of quantum nanotechnology. A robin is not just a bird. It is a flying quantum field detector. A leaf is not just a solar panel. It is a quantum computer processing energy. We are looking at the tip of an iceberg. If natural selection could exploit quantum mechanics for photosynthesis and navigation, what else might it do? Could our brain use similar processes? At the moment, it is slippery territory, but the door that was once double-locked is now ajar. Quantum biology teaches us humility. It teaches us that the rigid categories we create, physics, chemistry, biology, exist only in our textbooks, not in reality. In reality, there is only nature, which uses every single trick at its disposal, from Newton's laws to the Schrödinger equation, just to persevere, survive, and evolve. I hope this journey into the hidden side of nature has fascinated you as much as it fascinated me while preparing it. There is still so much to discover, and we will be here to tell you about it. If this video lit a light bulb for you, I invite you again to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. It is the best way to tell us that you want more in-depth videos like this one. Thank you for following us this far. Until the next exploration.